CBS 42 presents the Bracket Challenge Special, presented by Pepsi.
A historic season for Alabama hoops, and who says they're done? SEC regular champs, check. Title champs, check. Tournament champs, check. But Nate Oates wants so much more. Bama going dancing with the firepower to make a deep run, or so they think. Chris Brees, Drew Carter, Simone Eli will join us on a bracket special. We'll be with you till 7 o'clock. Take note, preface this. You don't need to make picks with us or choose our picks because we may not always be right.
Probably not. In fact, we're definitely going to be wrong, but we're going to do our best. And you see here, Alabama, you mentioned it, Chris. What an amazing season. They get a 2 seed in the NCAA Tournament, and they face the Iona Gales. We learned this just yesterday.
And they are going to face a very familiar face with Rick Pitino now going from Louisville back to Iona. What a name to go up against.
Yeah, seriously, Chris. You win the SEC, you go 16-2 in conference play, and your reward, a date with Rick Pitino, a guy who's just the third coach in history to lead 5 different teams to the NCAA Tournament. This might have been his best coaching job yet. Iona won the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MAAC, as a 9 seed to earn that automatic bid. So is Pitino celebrating, sneaking into the field of 68?
We got dinner, and then we immediately left at 10 o'clock. We didn't take off. We sat on the plane for an hour. We got in about 1:32, and we're going to celebrate when we get to the Final Four.
Now, Pitino later clarified that was a joke, but you got to love the confidence from a coach who's taken a team to the Final Four 7 different times. Hard to be confident, though, when you look at the numbers. Through 140 games all time in tournament history, a 15 seed has only beaten a 2 8 times. That's a winning percentage of .057. The last time it happened was 2016. Middle Tennessee beat 2 seed Michigan State. For more on Bama's mindset heading into Saturday, let's check in with Simone Eli.
Yeah, Drew, not many folks have heard of Iona, but the program has made 10 NCAA tournament appearances in the last 20 years. Their only first-round win back in 1980. However, their head coach, Rick Pitino, knows all about winning in March. Nate Oates preparing for the challenge ahead.
Obviously well coached with Coach Pitino. I just started watching their last game. I got the last 5 games loaded up on my computer, so I don't know a whole lot about them, but assume they're going to be well coached. They're going to play hard. I don't know Rick. I respect him. I remember having his coaching tapes when I was back in high school and I knew I wanted to coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach, been doing it at a high level for a long time, got a lot of respect for what he's done. He does a good job. He's been an NBA coach at Louisville, Kentucky. He's won national championships, but his Iona team's different than those other teams. I just started watching their Fairfield game from yesterday. I've got it right here on my laptop in front of me, but it looks like they've got some decent size. They've got some athletes. Gets them to play super hard. We're fortunate enough to get by them, and we'll either play against Kalen Smith, Maryland, or against Danny Early's group.
Alabama has been a 2 seed just twice before, in 1987 when they made it to the Sweet 16 before falling to Providence, and in 2002 the Tide won its first round game before losing to Kent State. Bama is 21-21 in the NCAA tournament and has never been to the Final Four. Guys, NATO's trying to change that.
Yeah, well, let's go through this bracket, shall we? Starting with Region 4, it's the East region, the Alabama region. Now, Bama fans, take solace. You were, in fact, the top number 2 seed in this bracket. Michigan's the worst 1 seed. They're on that 1 line. Then Texas and Florida State round out 3 and 4 here. Initial observations on this Region 4 bracket.
Well, Chris, Michigan is a team that's kind of limping into the NCAA tournament. Isaiah Livers, one of their best players, probably going to miss the entire thing. For me, what really stands out from an Alabama perspective is I'm afraid of the 7 seed UConn. We know they've won 2 championships in the past decade. They've got a guy in James Bouknight who could be a Kemba or Shabazz type. I'm scared of that if I'm an Alabama fan.
First of all, look at all of the Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
Play-in game for Michigan State and UCLA, UConn, Maryland, everybody you mentioned. I'm looking over here, and I'm very curious. Do you realize that there are a lot of champions in this bracket? Yeah. Alabama won all their championships. Michigan's a Big Ten champion. Florida State lost in their championship game in the ACC.
Texas.
And then Texas won their Big 12 championship. So I'm seeing a lot of people who know how to win, and Alabama may not like that.
Right, and Alabama has experience in terms of the seniors on the roster, but not a lot of tournament experience. So that could come back to bite them in this region.
If the Tide does get through this very difficult championship kind of region, they got to go and face the one who everybody thinks will be the champion in the end. That's Gonzaga in Region 1 in the West. You may be wondering, oh, they're playing a bunch of cupcakes out there in the West. Well, they beat Kansas, they beat West Virginia, they beat Iowa, who's already their 2 seed, and they've beaten Virginia. So 2 of the 3 teams who are in there, actually, all 3 of them, they've already beaten all top 3 teams who are in their bracket. Outside of Gonzaga, though, what would catch your eye here?
So Gonzaga in the top half of the bracket. I'm looking at the bottom half here, Chris, and I really like these Pac-12 teams. USC up here, Oregon down here. Oregon regular season champs. USC's got a top 3 pick in Evan Mobley, player of the year in the conference. I think they match up in the Sweet 16 to play Gonzaga.
Oregon has been injured all year long, and Dana Altman knows that, the head coach. They could easily be sneaky here. I'm curious what's going to happen with the whole COVID protocol because, 4 Virginia and 3 Kansas both had to leave their conference tournaments because of COVID-19. We know there's reserve teams. What's it going to be like with a COVID protocol if those 2 can even play?
Right, and I think Gonzaga really, I'm not going to say lucked out because they earned it, but this is kind of a cake region for the top overall seed.
Yeah, well, top overall seed, I guess, would deserve that, right? Yeah. Okay, other side of the bracket, Region 2 in the South. Baylor, if Gonzaga was 1A, you got to think Baylor is 1B. Are you kidding me? 31-1 in conference. They had 7 ranked teams in the Big 12 at one point. Ohio State, I don't know if I'm sold on them. I'm certainly not sold on Arkansas. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Baylor, who's got a really top seed there, to me, this seems like the easiest way for them to go through this, but I know you would like somebody who they're going to face pretty early.
That's right, Chris. You see this W here? We talk a lot about how the Big 10 is easily the best conference in college basketball. Big 12 is great. They've got a claim to that as well. But Wisconsin is a team that's top 10 in the nation in KenPom. I am a nerd about college basketball. I love KenPom. So when I see Wisconsin with their record that's not quite as good as some of those other teams, I seriously think the Badgers can beat North Carolina, turn them over a ton, and maybe knock off Baylor.
You love your nerd stats. They got seniors, and they don't turn the ball over. That's fantastic. Could be Baylor's biggest problem. With Arkansas, their last loss in the SEC regular season was January 16th to Alabama. That's great. They had a very long win streak. Arkansas is not meant to have nice things. I don't think they or Ohio State is for real. Ohio State had 4 straight losses towards the end of the year. That Michigan game really made them look good. I'm not convinced on that right side. I'll tell you who my upset is there a little bit later on. Region 3, the Midwest, the final one, that is Illinois, who snuck in there with the number 3 overall seed. They've won 7 straight games. They beat 5 ranked teams in that stretch, by the way. And then the 2 seed, Houston, also won 7 straight games. I know, albeit in the American Conference. And then West Virginia and Oklahoma State. I'm a little confused here.
Yes.
Because didn't Oklahoma State beat West Virginia back-to-back games, just the last 2 games they played, and now they're still behind them?
And their resume is better overall. And they've got the best player in America in Cade Cunningham. This is just a torture chamber, this region. There's one every year. It's the Midwest this season. Loyola Chicago has the best defense in the country. They're an 8, matching up with a team playing the best basketball in America in Illinois. Gonzaga got rewarded for their amazing season. Illinois did not. This is a brutal region.
Yeah, we don't know what to think about Houston. You want to talk about strength of schedule. Maybe should they have been a number 2 seed? We have no idea. Quickly here, before we move on, I'll go ahead and let you shamelessly plug number 11.
Yeah, right here. Okay, Syracuse, every time they're an 11, they do good things. They made the Sweet 16 last time. They made the Final Four as a 10. Our producer's telling me to wrap. I just want to talk about Syracuse for the rest of the show.
We'll talk about it in the break, but we have a lot more to get to. You've seen some of these seeds, but what about our picks? We're going to go through this entire bracket, including the SEC. Who is a potential sleeper pick to come out of the Southeastern Conference? Plus, big money is really made in college basketball, and you can make some money too. Our Bracket Madness Challenge. Go sign up on CBS42.com. Play along with us over the next few weeks. Just go to our website, click on the contest tab for more information. We'll be right back.
The CBS 42 Bracket Challenge Special, presented by Pepsi.
For what's being called the so-called down year in the SEC, the region's pretty much well represented. With Alabama, we have Arkansas, who of course had won 11 straight regular season games to end it all. Tennessee had that 15-point lead on Bama. Keep that in mind in the semifinals. Florida beat West Virginia. They were a 3 seed. LSU, you know, that game against Alabama as well that they felt like they should have won at the end of the championship. And then, of course, Missouri. Those are your 6 SEC teams. Now, time to say who we think is going to be a surprise SEC pick.
Yeah, Chris, we've been watching these teams all year, so are we a little biased? Maybe. We've got SEC tinted goggles on, but we both have an SEC team that we think can make a pretty deep run. In fact, deeper than anyone would expect. And I'm going to start with LSU, a team you just talked about. Down to the wire against Alabama, an instant classic team. I like the Tigers because they've got 4 dudes who can each carry the team offensively. Cameron Thomas, Trendon Watford, Javonte Smart, Darius Days. They've got a really good freshman in Milwani Wilkinson. This is the number 5 offense in America. Might run into Hunter Dickinson in Michigan in round 2. That could be a problem, but I like LSU.
Streaks are always a thing in the big dance. Tennessee has experienced that on both ends of the spectrum. They started this season 10-1, but then finished 8-7. So do we see December, January Tennessee? Or do we see February and March, the Vols team that should have beaten Alabama? Keon Johnson, a fun freshman to watch. He had 20 points against Bama. Could they fuel a run, but would have to play Illinois in the Sweet 16? All right, up next, show me the money. We found out just how important March Madness is to the NCAA, and why not playing again this year was really not an option. But before we go, we asked you on Twitter, how far will Alabama go in the NCAA tournament? 39% of you said the Sweet 16. Those of you 14% holding out hope for the Final Four. We'll be right back.
You're watching the CBS 42 Bracket Challenge Special, presented by Pepsi.
Welcome back into our Bracket Challenge Special. The 2021 NCAA Tournament will be unlike any March Madness that has come before it, and that's because every single game will be played in the state of Indiana, most in the Indianapolis area. The NCAA trying to create a bubble of sorts because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Elite 8 and Final Four will be played at the home of the Indianapolis Colts, Lucas Oil Stadium. And joining us now on the show to break this all down is Samford's Nathan Kirkpatrick, a professor of sports business. And Nathan, such a great time of year. You've been a coach, you've been a player at the college level. Is there anything really better than March Madness?
You know, it's funny. I was telling my students this morning, when you have sunshine and blue sky and the calendar kind of turns to March, to me, it's basketball time. And so, no, this is, if not the best sports time of the year, which I'm sure people can kind of argue, it's one of them for sure.
Nathan, when you look at the financial impact of March Madness, of the big dance, the NCAA, just how significant is this tournament year in and year out to college athletics?
It's huge. And obviously coming out of COVID, what we experienced last year, a 100-year type pandemic, no one anticipated it. But what's so interesting is you got to start with the television money. And so the NCAA has a television broadcast contract with CBS and Turner that runs through 2032. And it pays an average of almost $1 billion annually. But what that means is about $800 million a year in revenue is generated for the NCAA from the NCAA men's basketball tournament. That's about 72%, almost 3/4 of its entire annual revenue at $1.1 billion.
Is there a way to even make that up? I mean, the NCAA looking at what they lost because of the cancellation of the tournament, is there a way to even make that up, or do you just kind of have to cut your losses and move forward?
Well, I think it's both. I think that they tried the best they could to kind of mitigate some of the losses. You know, it's interesting on the business side of college sports, the NCAA, they had insurance policy kind of over natural disasters and pandemic type scenarios. But the insurance policy, it only covered about $270 million. So, you know, if you make $800 million typically in a given year from your revenue, you only had $270 covered from insurance. Clearly, there's a $530 million gap there, and that significantly hurt the NCAA.
A year ago, when the tournament was officially canceled, it was stunning to the sports world. I mean, it was complete shock to everybody, especially because it felt like at the time it just happened so quickly. The NCAA has now taken so many steps to make this happen, to kind of form that makeshift bubble. Speak to the significance of having this entire tournament in Indianapolis. Yes, a lot of folks are it takes away from maybe the glamour of what the NCAA tournament brings year in and year out, but hey, we have a tournament.
We have a tournament, and again, the calendar's March, and it still is basketball, and it's going to be a ton of fun regardless. I've heard it described and read it described as a snow globe type of environment in Indiana, where they're going to be kind of bubble entities, where they're going to be in bubble hotels and then take bubble buses to bubble venues. But it is absolutely a team effort.
Dr. Nathan Kirkpatrick, we really appreciate your time and your insight. Enjoy watching the tournament. It's going to be a great time, I think.
Well, thank you for having me. We're excited, and I hope you enjoyed as well. Take care.
We appreciate it. All right, still to come, we've broken down the brackets. Now it's time to separate the contenders from the pretenders. We're looking at which teams have the best chance to make the Final Four and potentially win it all. Stay with us.
Watching the CBS 42 Bracket Challenge Special, presented by Pepsi.
All right, we've reached that point in the show where this is where you make all of your money, your Elite 8 picks, how you can win your bracket pool. Drew, take me down the list.
All right, Chris, I'm going first here. I got the Zags, obviously, out west. I also like USC, like I said, to beat Oregon, move on to the Elite 8. Baylor, Ohio State, a lot of chalk here in the rest of the bracket. I'm sorry, I just feel like these teams are really good. Illinois, Houston, 1 versus 2 as well, but then you see meeting number 4 between LSU and the Tide of Alabama.
Nothing wrong with chalk. What about in your Final Four?
So, more chalk here. I've got 3 1s, and
which is a little...
Well, here's the thing, Chris. Not all these teams are going to make it. I just don't know which one it's going to be. I think they're all really good and obviously good enough to make it. The only non-1 seed there is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I've had a ton of fun covering and watching that team all season. Gonzaga is the best college basketball team, I think, of my lifetime. Illinois is playing as well as anyone in America right now with Io and Coburn. I got the Zags over the Illini in the championship.
My Elite 8, I agree. Gonzaga, you don't pick them. You're fooling yourself and you're missing out on points. Luka Garza is going to carry Iowa all the way through to the Elite 8. And then Baylor, their schedule speaks for themselves. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Texas Tech, I think they beat Arkansas and they beat Ohio State. Then in the Region 3 Midwest, Oklahoma State has beaten every single Big 12 team that's ranked. That includes Baylor. Very impressive. I think they upset Illinois because of that. Houston wins with ugly, gritty basketball. And then in the East, Florida State and Texas.
Brees, you got 5 teams from Texas in your Elite 8.
But you know what? It's fine. And half of them are from the Big 12. Yeah. That's fine. I agree. Gonzaga and Baylor, and here's why. Have we ever had a season where we talk so much about the top 2 teams and then everybody else? I think it's that way for a reason. Gonzaga, Baylor, Gonzaga winning the national title.
We both got the Zags. Hey, shout out Alabama Crimson Tide women's basketball in the NCAA tournament for the first time in 2 decades. Congrats to them. See you guys later.
See you next time on CBS 42 Sports.